Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe, Giannis, and I, we're joined with MDV, Matt DellaValle. That's right. We brought the crew back together again. A lot of you guys know MDV. He's our chief fitness officer here at NCFIT and at Train Hard, helping us with all of our different programs. We talked today about life, huh, Gabe? I mean, that's what we talk about.
Life, wrapping up the open. Got a good kind of recap. Last time MDV was on the podcast, we talked about his hip surgery, so it was nice to get an update there. Yeah, man. I mean, this was really fun. You know, obviously we talk to MDV every day with work, but you know, these podcasts are just like conversations and a really cool opportunity to like catch up. So it was really nice, man. I really enjoyed it. And MDV has so many, I think, insights and perspective, especially coming off the injury, that I think are super valuable. So I know people are going to enjoy this. I know I really enjoyed it, and we're going to have MDV on again soon.
Make sure to stay tuned at the end. We talk about baseball and Coach Steve. And as per usual, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, just want to say thank you. We appreciate you guys. If you've been listening for a while, we appreciate you just as much, if not more. Thank you for being dedicated to the show. Simple ask, if you could leave us a rating and a review, definitely helps out the podcast and helps us out. Without any further ado, let's dive into a great episode with Mr. MDV. Let's go.
Let's do it.
What's that called? The Encyclopedia of the Modern Day Bodybuilder?
Yeah, the new Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding by Arnold.
Well, dude, I'm going to battle you with the Encyclopedia of the Underground Strength and Conditioning by Zach Evanesh. I got this as a gift sent in the mail today, so I'm going to dive into this thing. This thing's thick, though, man.
I was just about to say, that thing looks thick. You're going to try to rip that with both hands?
Dude, there's no way I'm going to be able to rip this with both hands. But I was diving into another book recently, but this is, dude, I'm interested in how it goes. So I'll have to keep you guys posted. But Gabe, you definitely had the flex with Arnold, dude. That's the old school shit.
Dude, the black and white pictures in here of these guys just getting after it. But there's really, really cool stuff. The way he explains, because I think one of the interesting things about it is like, this was kind of written in a time where you couldn't just like Google different movement demos. So it's been really cool how he explains the execution of movements, because it was a time where you had to like be very clear about what you were trying to feel, how you were trying to move it, because you couldn't just like, oh, like now, you know, every fitness app or whatever, like people are usually looking for demo videos, right? Like you'll YouTube it and just look at it, and no one even has the attention span to like listen. I know I don't. You don't even listen to the video to see like how whoever filmed it is explaining it. I literally want like a 5-second, I see it and I do it. And that's been one of the coolest things about like checking this out when I like, I'm programming flex and I'm like, all right, like I've been using the same chest movements over and over. I'll go to the chest chapter and like, look at what he has, look at some of the descriptions. And that's the one thing I've noticed is how clear you have to explain like the execution of it, because you have pictures and words. That's it.
When was it published? In the 70s?
It's a good question. Let me see.
Dude, I met Arnold one time at the Arnold, and he walked over as we were doing King Kong over walls. Do you guys remember that move, that workout, the King Kong? It was like, I can't remember. Like
heavy deadlift, strict handstand push-up,
squat clean, and muscle ups, right?
We'd have to look it up for the exact.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's what it was, because it was like a combination. I remember I watched Josh Everett do it for the first time, and I was like, holy moly! It was like a 450 deadlift. It was 2 muscle ups, 3 squat cleans at like 250 or something like that, and then 4 handstand push-ups for 5 rounds or something like that. But at the Arnold, we did it with walls. You had to like climb over these things, and then Arnold showed up. It was badass.
So the official King Kong workout, is 3 rounds for time, 1 deadlift at 455, 2 muscle ups, 3 squat cleans at 250, 4 handstand push-ups. The ladies' equivalents on that, the deadlift at 320 and the squat clean at 175. So a pretty burly workout in terms of the barbell, but the gymnastics stuff seems to be
well, back then, more, dude, it was a big deal. Like,
yeah, for sure.
When it first came out, I remember like where I got pitted by the 255 on the third. The first time I tried it, I couldn't get the third squat clean on round 3. But anyways, Gabe, when was it published?
1985.
Oh,
Jason, did you see there were some recent clips of your Amanda workout that got posted from Seth from Jump Ship Training? Did like a whole breakdown of your Amanda performance at the CrossFit Games.
Gabe, did you see that one? Dude,
I briefly saw some clips, but I've seen that video many times. I think we've used it for stuff on social media many times. It's iconic.
Oh, it's iconic, right? So it was probably like a couple of days after it was posted, someone kept like a bunch of people kept like tagging me and stuff. And I wasn't really paying attention, but I was like, okay, let me go see what this is. And I'll go over there and I just watch Seth and another person's like reaction to me just like over and over failing squat snatches. And what made me laugh so much was like them laughing, like they were like literally like level 10 laughing. And so it made me like just crack up. And then obviously, of course, there was some comments of people like, dude, this, you guys are like trolling on this dude. This guy's out there trying to do a hard. So I kind of softened the mood by commenting like, hey man, like I'm laughing at myself in this moment. Like, it's all good. But yeah, that was funny, man. It definitely circled the internet for sure.
They let you guys run pretty wild and free back then, man. Just letting the barbell go anywhere. No boundaries.
It's chaos.
Yeah, dude, super chaos.
Absolute chaos.
I wrote this in the comment there, so, it was Amanda. So it was such a short workout, but a lot of people didn't. I mean, there's no way people would have known, but like after the event was over, like I laid on that floor for a solid hour and I had to be carted off the floor. And no one really knows that. I remember my buddy Andy was there and I get carted back to my car. And I was like, hey man, I need you to help me get in the car. He like helped me. I went to Chipotle. A couple hours later, I felt like 100%. It was all good to go.
It's so funny, man. Like as an outsider looking in, I remember like you always being that guy that just like, cause there was obviously everyone's going 100%, but like you're always the guy watching this like, oh dude, that guy's hurting. That guy's bad. And it's funny now because I feel like the more I get to know you, the more it just like makes sense that you were that competitor.
Well, the clips that came out around that time from Every Second Counts, right? Like you were in Every Second Counts, but you weren't a main character.
character?
Yeah,
No.
you weren't a main character in it until you won. But the clips that came out of that CrossFit Games are you kind of like slobbering and like rocking back and forth on the run, collapsed on the run, right?
That was No, that was in 2009. Yeah. So in Every Second Counts was 2008 games. And I just came in at the end and like messed up their whole video because they had been like following along people that didn't win.
Either way, the swaying and the slobbering from 2008 when you won the last workout carried over into 2009, which carried over into the Amanda workout. So there's been this kind of like ongoing reel of you of how you would compete.
Dude, I mean, well, that was something I was going to bring up. Like, I don't know. So based on that mindset, so you brought up the jump ship, and again, it was just an example of like hitting red line, and that's just like the way I roll, man. Like that's just the way I roll. That's just the way I'm wired. And it brings up a good point about the Open this year, and like I don't know if I'm gonna do another Open because I'm wired that way. And because I'm wired that way, like, dude, I was so sore from those thrusters and bar muscle ups. I couldn't even function. I couldn't sleep because I was so sore because I did the Open workout and then I went to jiu-jitsu like an idiot. And so I was just messed up. So I told myself, I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing the Open anymore. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it's 107. Did you finish the workout?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of repetitions.
Dude. I mean, so
it's deceptive though. It was deceptive for me when I was looking at it. 5 rounds, 10 and 10, then 7 rounds, 7 and 7. You're like, doesn't look that bad.
Well, I wanted to give some credit where credit's due.
So
I actually have a compliment. I have a compliment for Gabe, and then I'm going to kind of bash him on the backside. I will say that Gabe Yanez, for programming our flex track and for testing all the workouts and predominantly doing like linear progression, bodybuilding stuff, is super damn fit. Like, take this as a note that you can do our flex program and be super fit. Gabe did beat me in Open workout number 1, fair and square. He's a little bit shorter. It's no big deal, but he did beat me fair and square. Second workout comes around. He still put up a valiant, like a solid effort. And so I'm worried. I'm like, oh shit, he might get me across all 3 if I don't bring the heat on event number 3. Now I did beat you in number 3. And I took the overall lead against you, but I will say, dude, you are super fit for the training that you're currently doing. And I'm shocked at how you performed. I'm not shocked. I'm fired up.
Compliment.
Backhanded compliment.
But and this is one of the things that I was curious, MDV, your take too, because first of all, the Open this year was like super, super, super fun for me. I think the workouts were kind of like in my wheelhouse, being completely honest. But second, it was really fun because a couple of my friends and even Nick, who does our media, kind of like have been getting back into it and stuff. And so like, dude, the talking smack, the group chat, what did you get? I'm not telling you. That was always like one of the really, really fun aspects of the Open for me. Especially because all things considered, like the highest the stakes were for me were am I going to be on like the regionals team back when regionals was a thing, which again, it's funny to think about, but like back then that was like literally one of the most important things in my life. Right. But the fact that you just talk smack for 5 weeks, now 3 weeks. And it was just so fun to be able to compete with your friend and whatnot, getting a little bit of that back now was super fun. But I was also honestly genuinely surprised with kind of how I stacked up, but I started thinking about it. And I think that, it's not so much, maybe it's like a nice kind of stroke to my ego to be like, well, I don't even train for this stuff and I did this well. But honestly, dude, I think that the type of training, at least how I'm doing it now, maybe is even more conducive to if I was beating my head against the wall, doing high intensity CrossFit all the time. And I think that that's not for everyone. I think it's for me just because, I'm not the best at self-regulating my efforts. I'm not someone that does a good job doing a GPP program as written, where I'm doing a RP 5-day once a week and doing some for quality days. I've never been that guy. And I know that that's not a good thing. And I'm very much saying do as I say, not as I do. You shouldn't train that way, especially if you're trying to be better at competitive fitness. But I think that the way I train now, just given my personality and how I am about my fitness, has actually helped me maintain a level of fitness that's pretty similar to if I was doing that specific type of fitness, just because you can't beat yourself up the same way you can with CrossFit doing the type of training I'm doing now. You just can't. In that you're doing a lot of tempo stuff and that, you're not chasing a time or a leaderboard. You're just there isn't these outside factors putting pressure on me that I have to do this weight and this time. I'm just trying to get a good pump session in every time. And, I dip my toe into some anaerobic and aerobic conditioning once a week, and it's been enough to maintain. So long-winded way of saying, I don't think, as much as I'd love to say oh, this is how well I did in the Open, even though I'm not training that way, assuming that I would do so much better if I was, I don't think that's actually true at all. I think that the type of training I'm doing now, if anything, has been more conducive for me to perform well than bashing my head and doing really high intensity stuff all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell because you said
it's impossible to tell.
These 3 workouts were 3 workouts that were pretty much squarely in your wheelhouse. They were pretty conducive to doing well, considering the type of training that you've been doing. The weights were relatively light. The skill was moderate to low skill throughout. You didn't have any super, super, super long time domains. And again, like I said, the volume loading and skill capacity tests were all pretty moderate. So I'm saying not taking anything away from you. You did really well considering the type of training that you're doing. But that 50-pound dumbbell and those burpees, those are movements that you've done for years and years and years. And the 50-pound dumbbell you can toss around pretty easily. You're a shorter athlete. So, did really well in that workout. Just had to punch the gas for a short amount of time. That AMRAP 20, you've been doing a bunch of 20-minute interval type of workouts in the flex program. You row, you deadlift, you got good double unders. The 185 deadlift, probably pretty easy for you. Didn't really bang you up too much.
Yeah, definitely not heavy.
Third workout, you're super strong in the front rack position, not necessarily your front rack position. Your front rack position is terrible, but
so bad.
Your front squat is very, very strong. And
yeah, dude, that 135 was heavy though, man. That
heavy,
bro. I threw on a belt for a few of them because I was like, oh man, Yeah. MDV, the worst part about that workout, the number 3, was that because the way this workout went was 10 pull-ups, 10 thrusters, whatever it was, for 5 rounds, and then you go 7 and 7. And I get like, I think I'm like, it was like within 15 minutes. I think I got to like minute 11, and I look up at the clock and I was like, shit. I was like, I could finish this workout. And that's exactly what I told myself. And I just wanted to beat Gabe. I couldn't remember exactly what he got, but I knew he didn't finish the workout. But I looked up at it. I was like, damn it. I know I could finish this workout. And it was just like, it was at that moment, I'm just like, okay, here we go. Like, and that's why I don't know if I could do the Open anymore, man, because I get too competitive and then I throttle it. And then I sore as hell for the next, week.
I do want to give a shout out though to Nick Loera, our media guy, because he's also, dude, he's super fit. We scored very similar on all 3 workouts, very similar. And he would come in on Thursday after the workout was announced, film the videos that went up on social media with like our coach tip and our athlete tip, and then like jump in and do it by himself after. Like, to me, like very not conducive to like also like crushing it. But shout out to him, very fit camera guy. Media guy, very talented media guy, Nick Loera.
Oh man. Good. Anyways,
MDB, I wanted to ask, man, last time we had you on the podcast, we talked a lot about, the hip injury and all that stuff. I'd love to get an update. How are things going? How's that been like? I know it's been quite a journey that's still pretty ongoing, but where's the hip at?
Yeah. So anybody who is unaware, had a hip replacement in August of 2023, anterior hip replacement for my right hip. I had a condition called FAI, femoral acetabular impingement, which wore down the cartilage in that hip to a point where I was in constant pain for years. Got the surgery, like I said, in August, and now we're recording this in late March. So it's been up and down. I think that coming out of the surgery, I was really thankful to be done with the arthritic pain. That was something that was really challenging to deal with, just the constant pain of having whatever was going on in there be aggravated all the time, and got to the point where, doing everyday tasks was very difficult, supporting myself on furniture when moving around the apartment, not being able to walk more than, a couple of 100 feet at some points without having some severe limitation. I think, I going into the surgery, everybody who I talked to about it was very, very positive. And the outcomes on these surgeries are really great. I think modern medicine is fantastic in terms of what they can do with this kind of stuff. It's incredible the age that we live in. But I think, expectations probably were really, really high for me coming out of it, and maybe too high, maybe a little bit unrealistic about like how I thought I might feel coming out of it, and maybe playing a little bit of a comparison game between where I am now and where I was at my fittest and my healthiest. And I think that that's probably been one of the most difficult things, is like necessarily things have to have changed because of such a humongous change in my physiology, or a humongous change in my life and how I operate, and how much time was spent in that state. And it's hard not to compare yourself to where you were to where you are now, and either get kind of frustrated or down, or feel like, you're missing out on things that, you wish you could still do. I haven't been able to get back to jiu-jitsu, didn't participate in the CrossFit Open. I just can't move my body at that type of pace or intensity. And I'm a lot cut from the same cloth as you guys. Like when the clock goes on, like I want to go. And I think that that's something that I've had to relearn about my own training and what is fitness for me on a daily basis. And how do I look at it in terms of where I am right now to be okay with that. Like, I think that there's a loss of identity that can occur in some of this, where you were or felt one way and now you are and you feel another way. And you got to be really careful in that, because it can mess you up. So ups and downs, still training, do a lot of walking, a lot of biking. I do a lot of things per my PT and my doctor that, I can still get after and still do. So definitely have to fight the temptation sometimes to not do anything. There's certainly days where I don't want to train, don't want to kind of go out there and get after it, quote unquote, get after it the way that I can right now. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, man. So
is there anything that's been like helpful for those instances where, you just don't want to do anything? Cause I know that like that happens to everyone, and maybe like to some people it's not fitness, but there's definitely times where there's something that you should do that like, dude, I don't want to do that right now. Is there anything that, through this you've kind of like, picked up as like, this is my go-to for those moments?
You just got to do it, even if you don't feel like doing it. I mean, there are certain times when you certainly have to listen to your body. You have to take a step back. You have to rest. You have to invest in your own self-care, mental, physical, emotional. But I think that the difficult part here, or the tempting part, is like when you take that step back and you don't do something because you don't feel like it, even though maybe you're physically capable of doing it, starts to become really easy to make that decision over and over and over again, because like it's hard to go out there sometimes and train when maybe your mind's not in it, or your body is kind of willing, but maybe you're a little beat up and you don't feel like doing it today. So instead you're just going to, take another rest day. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with rest days. I'm just saying that at some point the decisions get easier to not do the hard thing than to do the hard thing. And then it becomes this kind of vicious cycle where, oh, well, I don't do that anymore, or I used to be able to do this. The comparison game, I think, is the hardest, has been the hardest part for me, to be honest.
And comparison to like other
Your
people, or
previous
comparison
self,
to
right?
like you prior?
Both. Comparison to previous self, previous level of activity. And then also comparison to others is very difficult. It's a motherfucker. It's a thief of joy, right? Like, and I'm not great at this. It's something that I'm working on, where like you can sit there and compare yourself to your previous self all day and just get down, and you can compare yourself to others and what they have in terms of whether it's life or fitness or whatever. And it does nothing to change your situation other than just make you feel worse. And maybe some people can thrive off of that motivation, and you can use it as a little bit of a spark, but like it, at some point, at least for me, it becomes really, really challenging to deal with.
Yeah. Well, you said something to me. Well, you said something to us like a couple months ago, whatever. It's like, and I know I've robbed and stole this multiple times, but you need to do the things you need to do to feel the way you want to feel. And it's like something I think about all the time. Like I was just in the plunge right before this, and it's because, obviously our family is going through a great deal of stress right now, and I need to do the things I know I need to do to feel the way I want to feel. And I just continue to remind myself of that. And it's like, it's not exactly what you're referring to, but I think it is similar, where it's like, if you feel like doing nothing, you got to remind yourself like, hey, like, how do I want to feel? And to do the things you need to do to feel the way you want to feel. Like, I feel accomplished after doing these things, so I need to prioritize them. But it's not easy, like, dude, like you're saying. And I also empathize with this idea of like comparing yourself to your previous past, because I, in some ways, have done that with like CrossFit type stuff, like looking at like, I don't know, a snatch number, but that's different because I still have a level of physicality in other areas. It would be difficult if that was taken away in some shape or form. And that's one of the reasons why I think like finding things that you can identify with that aren't, like, especially as an athlete, it's hard, because if you're completely looking at especially as an athlete, a coach, as being in the fitness space, it's difficult when something like that gets taken away, because it's such a big part of your identity. I think finding other things that are a part of your identity, I think, is key to that. Said this way, you have other things to lean on, because it's tough when you're so fully focused in the fitness space and part of that fitness gets taken away. Right. But then there's also perspective in the fact, like, you've made so much strides forward. I mean, a year ago, you weren't able to do anything pain-free, and now you can do all these different things,
Yeah, I think that perspective, like, it's always a battle for perspective, right?
Right.
And one thing that I need to do a better job of is having gratitude for what I can still do and still go out there and accomplish, and less about what I used to be able to do, or used to be able to lift, or used to be able to go and roll jiu-jitsu. I think like when you get stuck in that mindset, it's really easy to vibrate that low. It's really easy to be unhappy with your situation versus look at the positives that you do have and the things that you can still do and the fitness you can still express, and go out there and be grateful for it. And I mean, I think a lot of people probably struggle with this, and you know, I don't think you're alone. I don't think I'm alone in saying that, but I think the thing that does help is going out there and doing what you can with the best attitude you can and being grateful for that.
I love that battle of perspective thing. One, do you meditate at all?
I do not. I've dabbled around with different types of meditation in the past. I certainly have mantras and things like that. And you know, one of the things that's tough about all this stuff is like, I think that all these practices, like in an ideal world, like I would love to do all of these things. It becomes a little overwhelming for me, just to be honest. It's like there's all these things that start to stack up that I would like to do. And then like you look at all of them and it becomes overwhelming. So I'm trying to be better about.
Alex Hormozy did a post about that, like morning routines and how there's like 40 different things.
Yeah, dude, I've been guilty of that in the past, whether it's like, you know, resolutions or, you know, goals or, you know, things that you want to add to your morning routine. And I'm trying to pull back and focus on, you know, a few things, handful of things that I know that I can commit to, as opposed to setting this super lofty goal of all of these things. But to answer your question more directly, no, I don't currently meditate.
Jason, do you? Can you imagine Jason trying to shut that whizzing brain of his off for like 2 seconds?
Maybe he does meditate.
Yeah, jerk.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to Sal DeStefano from Mind Pump, and we were talking about morning meditation, and he actually has changed it from morning meditation to actually morning prayer, and he has then converted it into morning prayer spoken out loud. And so one of the things I've been incorporating as of lately with his kind of maybe guidance, inspiration is a better way of looking at, is in the sauna has been a really good time. So I'm generally in the sauna every morning at like 6:30, 7, not super early, but early enough. And instead of like, I'm having a hard time meditating in terms of like trying to like shut out the noise. I can't really do it. I already have terrible attention problems. I got all these things going on, and it's something I want to get better about. And but what he said is he converted that concept into prayer. So that's where I've been leaning towards as of lately. And I like the idea of out loud though, because
I've tried like guided meditations. I've tried a whole bunch of apps, and I just like, maybe to a lesser extent than Jason, but I really struggle too with just like quieting everything. Like, you know, you're supposed to like focus on your breathing. Like I'll start focusing on my breathing and then be like, wait, what do I have to do later? Like whatever, like it's so easy to get distracted by the noise. But I like that idea of doing it out loud, whether it's meditation and prayer. You know, prayer is meditation, I think, for a lot of people, or serves that kind of purpose. Right. Yeah. Well, you know, cause when you're doing it out loud,
well, he was talking about like meditation is this idea where a thought will come in your head, and that's normal. And then the goal is to let it, like a freeway, keep going. And then that's the way he described it.
Yeah.
So
recognize it, let it go.
Right. And I have not been able to do that, Gabe. But he does say like, that's completely normal that you would get this thought. And then the idea is to let it go and not to catch on to it. And that eventually turns into a state of like peace and meditation.
The reason I originally asked MDV was one time, so pretty long ago, because this was so my old colleague of mine when I was working at Peoria, he was really into meditation. He took me through a guided meditation. It was interesting, and it reminds me of what you were talking about like, you know, we spend so much time thinking about like the parts of our body that are bugging us. Like you never think about a joint unless it's hurting, right? And this whole guided meditation was like going through from like the tip of your toes to your fingertips and really thinking about each body part and how great it feels, like how it feels fine. There's no pain. it's relaxed and like really spending time, and like it'll walk you through like, and then there's your calf and then there's your quad. And it was a really because I mean, we all know this, like when you think about how your body's feeling, literally, unless it's bugging you, right? Like you only think about it when it's like, God damn it, my elbow's hurting again. Like, God damn it, my shoulder's hurting again. But you give it no time and energy if you're just like, dude, my back feels great today. Right. So I was remembering that, and I thought it was just an interesting way to maybe tap into that gratitude you were saying of, you know, sure, you know, we all have our little aches and pains, but we're also super fortunate that, you know, feel great in other places. So that's what I was thinking about.
It's funny you said that, because it's an old trick that I learned from a colleague when I was working at Reebok. And Jason, I don't know if you remember, many, many years ago, I talked to you about this, but like when I used to do, like, whether it's heavy double kettlebell front rack hold, or if you're holding a med ball, or it's usually during some sort of static or isometric position, isometric hold, static hold. And this individual taught me this trick where it was like, you pretend that your body is this empty plastic vessel. This is going to sound crazy. It's empty plastic vessel, right?
Keep it going. Keep it going.
And you picture yourself on top of your empty plastic body, pouring this thick paint into the shell. And then you picture the thick paint going into your big toe, your pointer toe. Each toe comes up your ankle, comes up your calf. It flows over to the other side. And it was just this mental kind of exercise that you could do while you were performing, whether it's the heavy hold or whatever, just to get yourself out of the mindset of thinking about how heavy does this feel right now. The seconds are ticking off of the clock slowly. It's like when you're in, you know, high school or grade school and you're watching the clock and you're like, I swear the clock just moved backwards, right? To get yourself out of that mindset and just to like kind of go through the time more maybe intentionally. So old trick. It works for sure. The time flies off of the clock like that.
Well, I think it's a big exercise that has been helpful with like doing the cold plunge, right? Like the last thing you want to do when you get in the cold water is think about how cold it is and how uncomfortable you are. You're thinking about everything else. You're thinking about your breathing. You're thinking about, you know, you're not looking at the time, counting the seconds and being like, I am freezing. When am I going to get to 3 minutes? Which, by the way, so you know how in January I did the cold plunges super early in the morning?
For almost the entire month,
dude. I swear, like PTSD. I haven't been back in. I have not been. I haven't touched.
So do you think that was actually worse? So just for everybody listening, I mean, people who have been fans of this show for a while know that you did this, and I have to commend you, bro. You're in Texas. It's cold. You would get right out of the covers and right into the plunge and
right out of bed.
And I want to say that you only missed like 7 days, right?
Yeah, I think I missed total like 3 to 4 days when I was actually home. So if I was traveling, I couldn't do it. I would like, you know, we were on the West Coast, went into the ocean, but obviously it wasn't like straight from bed. But I think like 3 or 4 days were literally days that I woke up and I was like, I cannot do this today. I just cannot do it today. But I did every other day. Yeah.
So now since that time, you have not been able to get back into the plunge?
I can't. I think about it. There's times where I'm like, I got to do it. There's times where I have time. There's times where I'm like, I'm going to go do it right now. And then I'm just like, nope. I just think about how much it sucks and then I just can't get in it.
Have you been in the sauna?
I've been in the sauna. Yeah, I try and get in the sauna once a week. I just have to go back to doing it. But I think, yeah, once a week. The sauna is such a production, man. I wish I could get into it more.
It's a long time.
You know, it's like I have to go turn it on and then like I try and get in for like 15, 20 minutes. It ends up being 30 minutes, which again, even hearing me say it out loud, it's not that much of a production. It's not that much time. The nice thing about the cold plunge is that like literally there would be times where like, you know, we're going to go somewhere or whatever. And it's like right before I shower, like I'm going to go out, I'm going to get in and then go straight in the shower. And it adds like 4 minutes to me doing whatever I'm doing. It's just so easy to like do it and not. But I've been really bad about it.
Maybe ramp it up, dude. Like, you know, so my cold plunge, full disclosure, is at 54 degrees. and you know what? For me, dude, that's hard. And
for sure.
Like, honestly, if my neighbors were outside when I was in the cold plunge just an hour ago, they probably would like call the police. I'm in there, I'm like, I'm like screaming because I'm trying to control my breath. I'm like singing like a It's because it's hard. Maybe you need to ramp up your cold plunge from like 35 degrees to 50 and then build back down.
I don't have it at 35 anymore. I changed it to 42 when I was doing the early mornings. But I either way, I think it speaks to, even a little bit of what MDB was talking about before, that I think that sometimes a rest day becomes a rest weekend, becomes a rest week, like all these things that are hard to do, but that you do because you need to do them. There comes a point where like you don't do it enough, where the initial, it's the whole never zero thing, right? It's like letting your momentum get to zero. Like it's so hard to get back in. But if you're doing it even semi-consistently, there's just something about it that like just keeps you kind of going, but you let it go for too long. And now that we talked about it, like I'm probably going to get in today or tomorrow because I'm like, fuck, like I should probably get in. But it's been like, I stare at it and like, I'm like, nope, not today.
Well, an author who, a couple of books that I really enjoy, The War of Art and Churning Pro, Stephen Pressfield, he calls it the resistance. And the more, and like I was saying before, like it's so easy to say no one time and then say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But once you say no that one time and then tomorrow comes, it becomes easier to say no again. And then you say, oh no, I'll do it tomorrow. And if you don't have, whether it's the discipline or you don't get a shot of motivation, or somebody doesn't come and say, hey, get the fuck out of bed, like, let's go. I empathize with people who, whether it's through life circumstances or injury or, mental health issues or whatever, like those things can weigh so heavy on you that the things that you might normally go do that would put you in a better place, the barrier seems so daunting sometimes.
Yeah, like catastrophic.
Insurmountable.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Amount of resistance to go and doing the thing. And when you're playing that comparison game to like where you used to be and how fit you used to be or how much fun you used to have while doing it or whatever it is, it becomes even harder because you look at it in a like almost resentful way. But the encouragement there would just be, do whatever the lowest barrier is to the thing that you're going to go do. If you have been in that place, go do it. If it's doing 1 minute worth of push-ups, if it's going out for a 5-minute walk, a 5-minute walk is better than a no minute walk, right? 1 minute worth of push-ups is better than no push-ups. It doesn't have to be, hey, I did an EMOM for 30 minutes of push-up, calorie bike sprint, pull up. And maybe that's what you used to do. That's okay. But, take the step to do whatever it is that's better than zero, like you said, Gabe.
Or maybe you change it up entirely, dude. Like think about it this way. Like, so for me, I'm never going to compete again in CrossFit. I don't, because of a lot of the reasons you're talking about, MDV, like they're not the exact same, but it's like my goals, my assumptions are here and my desires are here. Like I don't have that same heart. I don't have that same why to want to go compete. And so by me doing it, it's almost setting myself up for failure. And so I'm wondering, like, for people who do feel the way you're feeling, or like the people you're talking about, right? If you just switch up the course entirely. So like if the course is over here and I'm like, all right, I'm going to pursue this CrossFit path, but then all of a sudden it's like my why isn't there, my body isn't there, all these different things. Am I just setting myself up for failure by pursuing this path continuously? Instead, maybe I take a sharp right and I say, hey, I'm going to go pursue new skills like tactical games. Oh, or my body can't do that. Okay, then I'm going to go pursue a new skill over here. And I find new things to test myself and to give me that same fulfillment that fitness used to, but now I'm pivoting to something else. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe it's archery, maybe it's hunting, maybe it's like can you dive into something that doesn't impact you? Because otherwise you're just chasing a dream that's just unrealistic. You know what I'm saying? Like, or not a dream or a pursuit of who you were, but maybe who you were isn't where you're going to go in the future. So maybe you should just pursue something different and it'll give you that exact same fulfillment.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's value in going out there and diversifying your skill set. Or I think whatever the thing is may be less important than just getting out of whatever headspace or rut or hole that you're in, stop digging and going and doing the thing. And, you know, I think sometimes it might just be walking around the block for some people, or it might just be, hey, instead of, you know, I've given up my nutrition, and instead of door dashing something today, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to prepare a meal, and building off of that, as opposed to just continuing to let, you know, the path of least resistance continue to go, which is very easy to do. It's very easy to, at least I've found it's very easy to feel bad about your situation. It's very easy to not, you know, get outside. It's very easy to not do the workout. All those things are easier than doing whatever it is and having the mindset that, hey, it's not the same, but it's going to be great. So, yeah, dude, ups and downs with life. And I would encourage anybody who's out there that's, you know, going through some of those downs, just whatever it is, whatever that one thing is, it's better than nothing that day.
All right, taking a break from the podcast to talk to you about the Train Hard app. If you're listening to this episode, it means you care about training, protecting, and providing, which means that you care about your health, your fitness, and becoming the most capable human being you can, just like me and Jason. Me and Jason use the Train Hard app for our training because there are 3 programs and it has something regardless of the season in your life you're in. If you have the time and energy and you're trying to be the fittest, strongest human being you can, we have 4: strength and conditioning 5 days a week. If life is super busy right now and you need something that's just keeping your momentum from getting to 0, 20, 30 minutes max in the gym, in and out. It has a dumbbell version. If you don't have access to a bunch of equipment, we have the EMOM program. And if you're just trying to be the most jacked dad in the room, work on your body composition, we have the Flex program, which is exactly how I train and the program that I write. So if you haven't already, check the link in the podcast show notes, download the Train Hard app, train hard, but let's get back to the show. Sometimes it's like that first step is so small. It's almost like embarrassing to admit that that's a step in the right direction. You know, like, you know, it's like tough to like admit to yourself that, you know, going for a walk around the block is better than what you're doing now. And so then you don't do that. You're waiting for like, I'm going to get a gym membership and work out 5 days a week, or, you know, work out 5 times a week, but you never get to that because that's a bar so high, instead of just like kind of humbling yourself to the fact that like, literally, if I walk around the block every day this week, that'll be a major step in the right direction to where I am now.
Right. That used to be the big thing. Remember, I mean, it's talked about a little bit less these days, but I'm sure it's still a barrier for people when they're like, hey, I want to be fit enough to join the gym.
Yeah.
Am I fit enough to go to the gym? It's like, I always thought that was so perverse, but I understand it more now. I think, you know, injury and when you have something like that happen, and even like maybe Jason, like when you go through different things in your life with your family, and certainly when I go through different things myself, you gain perspective, and that argument or that position of like, am I even fit enough to do this? It used to feel like ludicrous to me. It'd be like, oh man, like you're talking about going to the gym. Like it doesn't matter where you're at. It makes so much more sense to me because of how deep that feeling probably is for people, where it just feels so impossible to do anything, whether it's mentally or physically, in the state that they're in that day, that moment, that joining a gym, it's like I said before, insurmountable. But like you just said, Gabe, it's like, that's the first step. It's now is the perfect time to do whatever the thing is.
It's funny. I just had a conversation literally today. So we're building out a new barn gym here.
I saw that.
We're going to move.
Dude,
yeah, dude.
It's so not just excited. A barn gym, bro. It's we got to name it something. You got to name it something. You know how like The Rock calls his gym, what does he call it? The Iron Paradise. Dude, you got to call your gym something.
We'll like, call it something. So the reason the gym setup we had before was great. I mean, it was a big space, had the equipment that we wanted to, like it served its purpose. I think so. 2 things. One, it was really hard to have Shay in there because it's a horse barn, and it's in my in-laws property. So my in-laws live adjacent to us. We can walk over there, super fortunate. And they weren't using their horse barn. So they were like, you can make this your gym. Great. Perfect. But obviously we weren't going to go in and like make a whole bunch of changes to their horse barn, because they also like want to have horses at some point. So we weren't just going to like take that away and be like, this is going to be our gym. So we weren't going to make like crazy changes to it. And because it's a horse barn, so it has these like dirt stables inside of it, even though it's a concrete pad, it's like impossible to really like keep clean. And so Shay can't come in there, because if he does and he's crawling around, like it's a mess. It's a whole thing. So that was part of the reason why we were eventually like, we kind of have to make our own space. And then Jason asked me to send me a video of my gym at the end of the year, because he wanted to see what equipment I had. And so I sent him this video, and I'm never going to forget, dude, the response that you sent me. You were like, dude, you said, I wish I'm sure I can find it in our conversation, but you said something to the extent of like, dude, that is not a good setup. You said that it reminded you of when you got videos of like soldiers that were on deployment back in the day. That's what you said. And
like you were in Afghanistan or Iraq at a military base, and they just created it out of nowhere.
So anyway, I was like, all right, we got to do something here. So we're building a space, and the whole idea is we want it to be climate controlled, because the summers here are brutal, and we want it to be a space where we can like all hang out, like the kids included. Fitness is a big part of both me and Ariel's lives, and like we want to always have access to do that stuff. And one of the things that's difficult is like balancing that with, where are the kids, who's taking care of them? Are we taking turns to work out? So the whole idea behind building the space is like 1/3 of it is going to be like the kids space. Like we want to make like a little rock climbing wall. We want to have their stuff so that they can also spend time in there. And it's a time that we can all kind of spend in there as a family doing the thing that's super important to us. I'm super excited, and hopefully I'll have some pictures, because we're trying to move all the equipment over this weekend by the time this airs. But the reason I bring that up is the contractor who's helping us build all that together, his father-in-law who helps him out, ended up moving into, just because, he was working here, started talking to my in-laws, is moving into that little apartment next to the gym. So he's living there now. So right now he's living there, and, I'm working out because the gym is still there, kind of right next to it. So, we've been talking, he's a super nice guy. So like whenever I go work out, he, comes out and we like chit chat a little bit. And it's funny because he used to run cross country, and like, how like people always like feel like they need to talk to you about fitness, or maybe not always, but like people talk to you about fitness because they're like, you work out, like you clearly, they feel like that's something that they can kind of like talk to you about. And ever since I've met him, Mike is his name, has been like, man, I got to get back into it. Like, one of these days I'm going to talk to you about like, ask you for some advice. And like today was like the 5th time he's told me this, and I was like, Mike, like, let's just talk about it right now. Like, you just need to like, just do something, just like start walking, man. Cause I think it was the perfect example of like, you could tell that he was waiting for the time where he's like settled into this apartment. Like, all right, like what's my routine going to be, like whatever. And it was like exactly what we were talking about, and that we had a good conversation where I told him, I was like, man, you just got to move a little bit. Like, look at where we live. Like, it's beautiful here. Like, just go for a walk every day, like get some movement in. Cause he was telling me, how he's like, shoulders bugging him. Like he used to do a lot of activities, got to put air on the tires of his bike so you can go bike ride. I was like, dude, you just got to start, do something. And anyway, it was a really good conversation. And I think it kind of clicked, but it was such a real example of exactly what we're talking about. Like people are putting, quote unquote, getting back into it on this super, super high pedestal, especially because, and the reason I bring it up too, is he's watching me in the gym. I'm spending 40 minutes to 60 minutes, all these different machines. Like I'm lifting weights. I'm clearly following a program. So I think there's also that like added, like that's fitness, right? Like that's what you do. And I need to get to the point where I can start somewhere close to there. So you kind of like, you compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. And I think that makes it super difficult, because then that gap seems insurmountable, where like you can start over here and it'll have a huge impact instead of thinking that you have to start over there. So anyway, it was a really kind of like timely example, I think, of exactly what we're talking about. And shout out to Mike, because he's definitely going to start walking. Good
old Mike. Well, we see that at the men's club too a lot, right? Same exact thing. People they just need to show up. And if they show up, then it starts building some more momentum for them, which I don't know what we're going to do this weekend, but it'll be probably something hard.
And how many people at the sorry MDB? How many people at the men's club, have started with the one workout you do a week? And sure, some people might still. I know there's one guy that literally just works out that just one time every week. But how many people has that turned into like working out a little bit more, being a little bit more active? What should I do about my nutrition? Like this stuff does snowball if you start small.
For sure.
Gabe, what I was going to say is like, that when you're talking to that guy, Mike, and he's like, I got to put air in my tires to go ride a bike. One of the things that I think I've had the realization about is like, although that might seem like a small task, that to him might feel super daunting because of what it might mean after he puts the air in the tires. But I think what I've found through this is like, if you just do it, if you do that thing, it's not that bad, right? And then you're able to go and take the bike. And it's just that small incremental step. I think what's worse, at least for me, is like when you look back and you go, man, if I only just did that thing, I could have started, or I could have prevented this, or I could have saved myself X number of hours or days or weeks of additional anguish or whatever it is. Jason, you say this all the time. It's like, and it can be compared to, jiu-jitsu or starting fitness or putting air in the tires, whatever it is. It's like, when's the best time to do it? It's now. Well, yesterday, second best time to do it is now, right?
Especially jiu-jitsu. If you don't do jiu-jitsu, go ahead and do that.
Lots of people getting into jiu-jitsu in the CrossFit space, man. It's everywhere now.
Dude, it's so funny. I was filming this video the other day, and I had a mouth guard in the entire time, getting some great rolls in. All of a sudden, Nick's there, he's filming, and I take out my mouth guard for one round, because at the end of the round, I was like, hey, at the end of the round, I'm going to promote the new rash guard. So I take out my mouth guard for one round out of like 10 that I did. Sure enough, I get nailed in the face. Oh. And I start bleeding, but it added some, what was that, Gabe? It added some,
it was good, man. It was good. It was as if it was scripted.
Not comedic, but like a dramatic effect to like, hey, go buy the rash guard. Here I am, like bleeding out of my mouth. But yeah, everybody, dude, a lot of people are getting into jiu-jitsu because it's a great natural next evolution. If you've been doing CrossFit for a long time, it's a phenomenal thing to get inspired by. It's not to say you shouldn't still be doing CrossFit. It's just another thing to add in. And, if you can do it, again, we've talked about this countless times on the show, but it's like, you start off doing privates and then you kind of evolve from there, but you won't regret it. You surely won't regret it. But one thing too, MDV, I was thinking about when you were talking about doing something, there are days, in general, I'm pretty self-motivated to train. I'm pretty self-motivated to do whatever. I don't really need anything, but there's some days for jiu-jitsu and, that I do need that. Well, first off, you need training partners, but just training by yourself, it gets tough. Like it gets tough if that's all you do. And so for me, I'd recommend for anybody, especially if you're coming from a background where you're like, hey, you're unmotivated, you're having a difficult time, having other people hold you accountable is phenomenal. One of the reasons why I love doing the men's club is that it requires me every weekend to go to bed earlier, to wake up early, and to get after it, because those guys are counting on me just as much as I'm counting on them. And having that camaraderie has been huge. It's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. And so if you've just found yourself training the garage or training the gym by yourself, and you're finding that you're just lacking motivation, dude, go join a gym, go find a group of guys, go connect with other people, hold each other accountable, because oftentimes that could be the catalyst that keeps you on the path. Because it sucks if you're unmotivated and you just keep going down this way. You need other people to raise you up, including myself. I'm raising my hand saying that I'm getting that from people multiple days a week. And then the other days a week, I can just fill it in. But if you're not getting that at all, it's really difficult.
Yeah, the connection and camaraderie. I mean, when I was training at 10th Planet Portland, that was the best part of it. The training was amazing. The workout, the physicality of it, unbelievable. The community there was second to none. It was awesome. Very, very cool. Miss it a lot.
Yeah, man. And then you see it in kids sports right now too. Like, I mean, shout out to Kaden. I put this down, something I wanted to talk about, but he threw a immaculate inning. Which I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know that was what it was called, but he went 9 for 9, 9 strikes on 9 throws. And it was a cool moment because I had never seen it before, but it's a good example of like camaraderie, right? All the kids getting together, championing, and celebrating an achievement. And the coach did a really good job of like celebrating it enough where he drew attention to it, but it wasn't about Kaden. And then boom, right back into the game. And we have been blessed this year. Kaden's been blessed on his AAA team to have a coach that really looks at things through a lens of sportsmanship, positivity, and he wants to win, but not at the expense of those other two things. And he's exposing a lot of kids. When he first came to me, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but when he first sat down with the team, he said, hey, I'm going to have every kid pitch, and they're going to pitch the entire inning, regardless of how well they're doing. And at first I'm like, dude, I don't know if that's a good idea, man. Like, what if the kid's just really bad? Like, that's embarrassing for the kid, right? Like, I'm thinking, like, what if you just keep walking people? And they have a 5-run rule. So the worst you're going to get is 5 runs. But now that I've seen it actually executed, I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to allow the boys to build confidence, to know that they're not going to get pulled out, that they need to kind of settle down and get back in the game. Now, granted, if they can't pitch at all, he probably won't even put them in. But out of the 12 kids or whatever it is, almost all of them have tried to pitch at least a little bit, but he allows them to fight through it. And I think that's been really powerful for me to see. I think it's going to help us in the playoffs. So shout out to Kaden on the immaculate inning though, and camaraderie.
Shout out to Kaden. Hell yeah.
Kaden throwing smoke. Did you read the Meditaion Manifesto? Did you end up reading it?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. So
Yeah.
I'm reading the book now. So we talked about this on a podcast with Sal Brazell, MDB. Have you heard of it? The Meditaion Manifesto?
No.
So you know Mike Meditaion?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So he, when the short version of it, when he ended his career, he was like asked to coach a little league team, like, you know, in his area. And he was basically like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. And wrote this letter that went viral. It's a 5-page letter, but it's 5 pages, short read, highly recommend. And basically outlined exactly how he was going to coach this boys and the things that were going to matter and weren't going to matter. The letter went viral, and it's like the perfect outline of what you would want from someone coaching your kids. Like, it's all about like, you know, we're going to lose a lot of games. My goal here is to like, you know, raise these young men and make sure that they have a love for the sport, because those things are more important at this level, not, you know, who's playing where, who's where in the batting order, all the things that the parents care about. And the open letter was for the parents. He was like, if I'm going to do this, like if you're asking me to do this and I'm going to accept, here is exactly how I'm going to do it. And getting in front of that, setting the expectation. And there's a book about it too that I'm reading now that's pretty good. But that's what that reminded me of. It sounds like he has a really good coach, man, because that's the stuff that matters. And unfortunately now in youth sports, it seems like, dude, it's more navigating the parents and the parents' expectations and, you know, a lot of the pressure that comes from that. But anyway,
I'm going to film this guy. I'm going to send you a video the next game. I've never seen anybody in my life be so positive when things are not that good. I've never seen dude,
have him on the podcast, dude.
Dude, we should have him on the podcast. I swear.
You have him on the podcast for sure.
A kid will throw like the worst pitch, or someone will strike out. Something will happen. He'll be like, you know, good, whatever. Like, he'll find the good in anything. And I'm just sitting there like, all right, bro. Like, I like you. Like, and it's just consistent, nonstop the whole game.
One of the coolest parts about that, and I am not good at that mindset. Like, I need to work on it for sure. But one of the great things about that mindset is like, he's not only is he teaching those boys how to deal with adversity and not get overly emotional, not get frustrated, you know, look at the good in things. He is also probably getting repetitions in it himself, because what's the alternative there? That he gets angry, he gets frustrated, he yells at people, internally starts to struggle. Like, the repetitions there that he's getting for himself, whether he knows it or not, he probably does, are super valuable in handling other life situations that might come up for him of higher importance, right? Like, you know, that's like when you're driving and somebody cuts you off, or you spill your coffee and like, you know, whatever. Like, I'm sure everybody's gotten angry at stuff like that. I do too. Like, but to practice having the restraint in that situation, or to calm down and breathe, it's getting the repetition for the next situation that happens that's a little higher priority, or the stakes are higher, where you can exercise that skill set. So that's really amazing. You should definitely have him on the podcast.
Dude, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to film him the next one. So his philosophy was he was a softball coach by trade, or not by trade, excuse me, but he's traditionally been coaching softball. And his philosophy, and I agree with him, is that for girls to win, they have to have fun. For boys to win, for girls to win, they have to have fun. So when girls have fun, for girls to win, they have to have fun. For boys to have fun, they have to win. So let me say it again. For girls to win, they have to have fun. For boys to have fun, they have to win. And his philosophy, because I had gone to some softball games, was like they would be singing and cheering and chanting and all this kind of stuff, and they'd be creating an energy. And then that energy plays out into the field and the girls end up winning. And he wanted to bring some of that to baseball. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know if these boys can like cheer songs. Like I just don't see that happening. And I got to tell you, man, the boys are cheering more than I expected. The boys are creating energy more than I expected. And his positivity towards like things that are just not very positive is very inspiring. So I'll send you guys some videos, and shout out to Coach Steve for the impact he's making. We're only like 4 or 5 games in, but I'm curious to see how it evolves.
That's fun, man.
Got to have Coach Steve on the podcast now.
Dude,
Gotta have Coach Steve.
Jason, I think you might find this interesting. I was sharing some Instagram clips with Gabe last night, and there's a college pitcher right now who throws 90 plus miles an hour with both arms, ambidextrous, 90 plus miles per hour. It's unbelievable. It's like the wrapping your head around that. Like, first of all, think about trying to throw that hard with your dominant hand, your most coordinated side. And then think about trying to do the same or close to the same with your non-dominant side. Like try to even like brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Like for anybody who's ever tried to throw or do something skill-based with their non-dominant hand, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm sure there's other people out there who have done it, but I've never seen anything like that.
Did you know what? And there's someone in AAA right now who could actually do that. Not 90 miles an hour, but in Kaden's league, there's someone that does that. And you know what? It actually benefits them. They have a pitch count that you have to hit. You can only pitch a certain amount. But if I'm not mistaken, because he pitches with both arms, he could keep going.
He switches arms. Yeah.
Yeah. He switches arms. Isn't that crazy? Like
I was wondering about the rule about, is there a rule in which he in the same inning has to pitch with the same arm or not? Like, because it'd be a huge advantage, right versus left-handed batter, if you were able to change your arms mid inning or even mid at bat.
Mid at bat. Yeah. I remember because he's not the first ambidextrous pitcher. They had a rule where I don't know if it was the inning, but it was definitely a batter. Mm-hmm. And I think you had to like claim this would be something you'd have to like, whatever you start with, because also you can't impact the other manager wanting to, sub a pinch hitter, or if it's a switch hitter, like, just going back and forth of like, are you going from the left or the right side? Interesting implications. I am so pumped that baseball's back. Like I love baseball. Opening day, which I actually didn't know. My friend told me started already because they're playing a series in Korea as like promotional to get, baseball out globally a little bit more. And I'm also like this whole like Ohtani thing is, I love it. I was telling MDV this morning.
Oh, his manager was found like stealing money, right?
It's getting deeper and deeper though.
Dude, it is deep. So
I read up a little bit more this morning.
The bullet points are that his translator, who is like a very close friend of his, it's been Ohtani's translator for forever. It's beyond like just work. Like a lot of people say that they're like really good friends. Just got fired because he was betting with a bookie. So he's betting illegally because it's not legal yet in the state of California. So he wasn't doing it through a lot of these legal betting places. He was betting on sports, not on baseball, but he was betting on sports. Now, the controversy comes in that allegedly, the story is he asked Ohtani to help him get out of some gambling debt. And so Ohtani was going to, quote unquote, loan him the money to get him out of debt. But instead of giving him, the translator, the money, he wired it directly to the bookie. So now there's like wire transfers connecting Shohei Ohtani, who for anyone that doesn't know is like maybe the biggest star in baseball right now, especially globally, because he's a huge star in Japan. There's like literal wire transfers tying Ohtani, wiring like $500,000 to this bookie that got caught up in an FBI investigation. So Ohtani's lawyers are claiming that this was just, he had nothing to do with the betting. He was just trying to help his buddy out, loaning him some money to get out of some gambling debt. It's all the translator. He's doing it all. But, you know, there's evidence that ties him to this. And then there's also like all this chatter about the MLB is not investigating him, but they're not investigating him because he's such a star, right? Like it's not good for baseball for Ohtani to be, you know, caught up in controversy. So there's some people out there that are, you know, saying that they're playing soft with him because of who he is. If it was any other player, this would immediately be like suspension, investigation, whatever. So anyway, a lot of drama going on. I love me some
Baseball's
drama that doesn't
back.
involve the Mets.
Dude, that's crazy, man. I had no idea. So I'm actually going to be on my first, I have not done a fantasy anything in as long as I can remember. I think when I was in like college, I did a fantasy football, but my brother-in-law wants to do a fantasy baseball, and because Kaden's super into it or whatever. So I'm gonna have my fantasy team. I might need to ask you for advice because I don't know anything about baseball.
You're in it for the long haul, dude. 162 games, fantasy baseballs.
Diving into fantasy baseball is a bold first move.
Wait, do you have to change? You don't have to change your players every week. You can just
you don't have to do anything. But
yeah.
the thing is, like, you know, like you play fantasy football, it's 16 weeks. You have the whole week to like, you know, whatever you're gonna do for that week. Baseball, there's games there's games every day minus the All-Star game, and it's 162 games long. It's just, I mean, it's whatever.
There's more
like,
roster adjustments for sure in fantasy baseball.
You got to be on the waiver wire. You got to.
What a commitment.
I think they've simplified it though. There's certain simpler ways to play fantasy baseball as opposed to playing the whole 162 with constant changes and stuff like that. So,
dude,
maybe there's a kid's version. Maybe
I'm gonna have to look it up because
get Coach Steve to manage your fantasy baseball team.
You know what I need? I need Coach Steve to
I'm just all positivity,
dude. I swear, the next game I'm gonna take a video and you guys are just gonna like crack up, dude, because he comes up with things that I can't even fathom. Every single time. It's perfect. Well,
it's a good coach.
He is a good coach. And I think our youth need more good coaches. And, you know, I tried my best when I was coaching flag football for the boys. That was very difficult.
Is that when you were sprinting up and down the field in your bare feet?
Yep. But this last season, this season just ended 2 weeks ago. We actually ended up losing in the playoffs. And one of the boys, oh, it's so bad. One of the boys took his gloves off and threw them on the ground, was stomping on him. And I had none of that. So I went up, I grabbed his gloves. I was like, this is unacceptable. And I was so upset. And then I had to like kind of take a breather. It was so blatantly unacceptable. But I had to like take a deep breath. I was like, oh shit. I was like, don't get too crazy, you know, because you're trying to teach these boys sportsmanship, but you know, they get heated and then all of a sudden, you know, you care. But that was my end of the season moment when we lost and they were stepping on the gloves. I just couldn't handle it.
Gabe, I know we're getting kind of close here on time, but Gabe, you kind of brought this up earlier when you were saying like navigating the parents in these, you know, youth events has become so much more difficult. Do you think that that's a consequence of like the parent interactions going viral? Like we see so much more of it. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue that there's been an increase in those types of incidents because maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm disproving my own argument here, but like we see a lot of them because they're so visceral and so viral. Like when something happens like that, it's always on social media or the news.
Yeah, I think I was referring less to like, you know, a parent screaming at the umpire or like, you know, blow ups in these leagues, but more about the fact we talked about this a little bit with Marcus on the podcast we had with him, and Mike Matheny talks about it in his book that, you know, like youth sports have turned a lot into like, you know, I as the father of this kid, like it's for me, my ego, that I want him to do well, that I want him to win. And it's putting undue pressure on the kids to not enjoy the game, but to just perform, because like you want to have the all-star on the team. Like it becomes very egotistical about the parents, because you want to be the dad of the really good Little League kid versus just like, this doesn't matter for him. Yeah. I mean, he should learn how to be a good team player, and he should learn to love the game and get some exercise and spend time outside. Like in the grand scheme of things, those are the intangibles of youth sports, not him being like, you know, the best pitcher. It was funny. I just saw a tweet today where it was like there's a 50% chance, I might butcher this, but there's a 50% chance that like a top MLB draft pick is going to be a bust. But for some reason, you know, a kid's going to be an all-star when he's 8, right? Like how ridiculous is that, right? Like you get drafted like top 10 by a major league team that had like professional scouts looking at you. And historically, like 50% of them end up being total busts. But for some reason, there are parents that are convinced at like age 10 that like this kid's it, like he's going to make it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, 'cause in baseball, you don't jump to the show, quote unquote, usually right away, right? Like these kids who come out of college or whatever, prep schools or whatever, when they get drafted, they get into the farm system traditionally, right? And then they work their way up, which is very different from the NBA draft or the NFL draft, where you're right into the league.
They have immediate impacts, like the stars, right?
Why do you think that is? Like, I'm just curious. Like, why do you think that is? Is it just it takes more time to groom them, develop them to catch up to the skill of the game? Like, why not put these kids into the organization right away or into the starting lineups right away?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what jumps out at me is like college baseball doesn't seem to be like a big.
Do they get paid, Gabe?
Development? What in the minor leagues?
Yeah, no, not minors. I remember, but like, you know, like in football now, there's some kids that are making like tons of money.
Yeah.
Can you get the same thing in baseball? Yeah. Like if you play for like,
you can, yeah.
Like in college, you can get paid pretty well.
I think it extends across
if it's happening, but
the entire NCAA, right? Because there's female athletes in volleyball, gymnastics, soccer, basketball who have had these big endorsement deals as well.
Yeah.
It's not just men's football.
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. The coaches make a difference. So, and I think like, you're right though, MDV, like some of it too, is that there's a lot more attention being brought to these things because social media could just highlight them. Like Tom DeBoss puts up things all the time of like police officers who are kind of getting like
the short end of the stick and physical interactions. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And the question becomes like, was that not that way 50 years ago? Well, maybe not. I mean, I do think that there's definitely been a shift in culture in terms of like the respect given and all that kind of stuff. But also maybe these things just weren't caught on camera. And who knows? I mean, I suppose there's a new Nickelodeon documentary that's just coming out that's super heavy. So like a lot of this stuff is just like, I don't know if there just wasn't as much attention on it as there is now.
I think it's I do think it's a big part of it. And it's funny. I was just listening to this on a podcast. I was talking to Ariel about it. Andrew Schultz was on a podcast, and dude, I love listening to him. He makes me like, just like proud to be a New Yorker again. Like, not that I'm not, but like the guy is just such a New Yorker through and through. But he was just talking about like basically how like there's so much news now about like, New York City's like completely in the dumps and crime is like super high. And he was just saying how he lives there. He's lived there all his life. And like sometimes the perception that if you just are looking at it on the media isn't exactly what's going on. And how when he was growing up, like there was a week where like literally all 5 of his friends got jumped for their North Face jackets. And there was a time where he was in high school where like the school would send out like a very important like announcement that like, hey, Halloween's coming up. No one wear red. There's a gang initiation coming up. And like, they're out there like, like slashing faces. Like crime has always been a big thing in big cities. And it's just now you hear about it all the time. There's videos all the time. And I'm not, saying anything about like whether I believe crime is growing in big cities or not, but I do think that it's something that is being amplified maybe a little bit more than what the actual like truth is.
Yeah. I mean, look at California. I mean, for sure, there's definitely like a homeless problem here and all these types of things. But I do think that the perception from the rest of the country on California might not be the reality. Like there's I mean, that could be extreme. It depends on people's positions on it, but the media doesn't do a good job expressing the entire view of the entire area. They just hone in on a specific thing. That goes for almost everything. And social media isn't helping the situation because it's just so fast acting, right? It's just so just like boom, 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 boom. Just media has changed. And that's why I love this long form stuff, man. You can actually have good conversation.
Yeah. I mean, the access to instant information, I think, is one of the things that skews a lot of this. Like if an incident happens, no matter what it is, if it's deemed newsworthy, it's out there right away. You hear about it no matter where you are, right? It could happen across the world. It can happen right next door to you. So there is that difference now, like 60, 70 years ago, you didn't have that type of immediate access to information. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether or not, like Gabe, you make a good point. Like in the late 80s, you know, New York City was extremely dangerous. And now it's not as dangerous, but like you certainly have, like you said, the perception that there's, you know, a lot of crime. And maybe there is. I don't know. I'm trying to stay out of the fray on this stuff. It's
for sure.
Impossible to tell.
I don't know, but I think he had a really good, like, nuanced perspective from someone that's there, you know, and it just makes you, it does make you think, you know, like, is all the stuff that you see, like, how true is it? And how much is it just like the fact that, like, they can highlight all this stuff?
Yeah.
Well, on those notes, it's a very complicated world in the media space right now. That is a good reminder to always train hard so you can protect and provide those you love and those that you care about, especially yourself, in addition to yourself. Well, MDV, Gabe, Yanez, appreciate y'all. If you guys enjoyed this episode, simple ask, leave us a rating, leave us a review, share with a friend, and keep getting after it.